This is part of the Likketei Sichos, Chelek Tesvav, Sicha, third Sicha. This is printed in pages in there?
281.
281, okay. Okay, Aleph. If a pasuk when Yivasar Yaakov Levadei is in front Etachel Pirushim. In regards to the pasuk that Yaakov remained alone over there, the famous pasuk that when his children were traveling, so it says that either from the Yabasha, Yaakov remained alone over there. So there's several explanations, several interpretations. Aleph, the Gemara Zak, or the Gemara says, and it's brought down by Rashi in a slightly different wording, and it says like this: Nishtayr al pachim ketanim. He remained because of the small utensils. Thus is merubas and vort levadei, and this is also alluded to in the word levadei. Why? We have seen Balei Tesis bring that up, like the Balei Tesis explain that al tikra levadei, do not read levadei, which means alone, ella likketei, or rather for his drug. So that's the first explanation. Vayishlach Yaakov levadei. What does it mean that Yaakov remained alone over there? That he remained to collect the small utensils, and don't read levadei, remember likketei, that he remained to collect even like the small drug. That's what the Balei Tesis say. And in base, in Medrash, steht Ma Kadosh Baruch Hu Kosev B'Y V'Niskav Hashem Levadei, Af Yaakov V'Yivasar Yaakov Levadei. And the Medrash says that just as with regards to the Eibishter, it's written, and he shall be exalted on that day. He speaks about Yemesa Mashiach, that the Eibishter is going to be Niskav Hashem Levadei, is going to be exalted. Af Yaakov, so to Yaakov, it's written by Yivasar Yaakov Levadei, Yaakov remained alone. So that's the two explanations. Either Yaakov remained to receive Likketei, his drug, or that it's referring to that just like Hashem, it speaks about V'niskav Hashem Levadei, that Hashem will be exalted when Mashiach comes. So to Yaakov is written that he was exalted. Now, the Rebbe says like this: we feel mogeret of an Ali Pirushim Meifin Zelman Pasuk in Megoshkin from Zelman Vard Zwischen sich Akeshu Techni. We explained in several occasions that all of the interpretations of the psukim, and certainly of a word, they share this intrinsic connection. That from our we have to understand. Was is the shaytas zwischen die zwei Pirushim beninte de dan? So the Rebbe asks, when you apply the same idea, what's the connection between the two? Yeah, they have seemingly opposite connotations. Why? As Leiden Pirush Gemara as Yaakov's Iber bleiben Levadei gewinnt verbunden mit Ketanim mit Sachen was haben gehabt Gott wenig Chshivas. Now, according to the interpretation of the Gemara, Yaakov remained alone is associated with like small utensils, objects that have very little significance, very little importance. Yazei vert Likketei the vert Levadei. Same thing, the word Levadei, it's interpreted al tikri Levadei el Likketei. We say that it's like a drug. So what's a drug? It's very think about it nowadays, like you're going back to go and collect the soda bottles or whatever. Now, when you look at the Medrash, the Yaakov remained alone, it reflects like a peak of elevation. It's Indian of like very, very high, exalted, high levels. So it's like you're comparing to the singular, the Hashem himself. It's very third. So you're dealing with how the Eibishter is revelation, the oneness, how it will be manifested when Mashiach comes, as we see the continuation on the pasuk by Yemahu on that day when Mashiach comes. So seemingly these two, the Pirushim, not only they don't not align, but they're mamish opposite. By saying V'niskav Hashem Levadei al tikri Levadei Likketei, that means that Hashem is like you're referring to this pasuk as like very small, insignificant things. By saying in the second explanation, you say that Ma Hashem, what's written by Hashem, that V'niskav Hashem Levadei, that Hashem is very, very exalted. So too, Yaakov is in the state of exaltation. So how does that work? So now the Rebbe is going to get into, this is a connection with Yud Tes Kislev, why Chassidus was revealed specifically in Mashiach's times, or in the present era. Why wasn't it, if Chassidus is so important, why wasn't it revealed in the times of the Ishenim, the time of the Gemara, the Baal Shem Tov came and revealed it? So now the Rebbe says in the basis, you do over the Shalosh Shtaib, as alle Meide Ashana Zaym is in the Parshas HaTorah, was wird gelehnt in these manim in welche the Meidim Zaym Lechal. It's well known, what the Shalosh writes, that the weekly Torah portion always alludes to the Yom Tevim that occur during the weeks that are read. Von uns verstanden, when again the Yud Tes Kislev was his chol b'kam shonim v'der yor in Shabbos Parshas Vayishlach, as the Teichen for Yud Tes Kislev is merubim in Parshas Vayishlach. So from this we can conclude that since many years, as this year, Yud Tes Kislev falls in Shabbos the week of Parshas Vayishlach. When's Yud Tes Kislev? Also Shabbos this year, right? When's Yud Tes Kislev?
Yeah.
Right, this year. So the theme of Yud Tes Kislev was alluded to in the Parshas Vayishlach. So the Rebbe says like this. But man das verstehen beektem, so the connection between Parshas Vayishlach and Yud Tes Kislev can be understood as follows. Das was Teres Chassidus ist das Gale geworden, Dafki in the Dedes Acherim, und nicht in die Friedeke Dedes, was die Shenim ben Malachim seine Finanz Versbord. So these two explanations, there's two explanations given why Chassidus was revealed specifically in the later generation, as opposed to previous generations, when we know people were on a much higher level spiritually. That's what the Gemara says, that if those of the early generations are like angels, the Gemara says then we are be considered like human beings, like humans. So why is it that Chassidus was revealed only now? So the Rebbe says this. Aleph. Salm Cheshev Kofel Mechubo was his netesif geworden. In die Dedes Acherim, erfahrten dort die Ikfes in the Mashiach. Was we ankommen zu Hechler was soll beikommen euch of dem Cheshev. So because of the spiritual darkness that is contained to swell the later generations, and in particular in the era of Ikfes and Mashiach, the times when Mashiach's approaching footsteps can be heard. So the revelation of a higher light is necessary to empower to overcome the darkness. Since we're in the mamish in a very, very low state, a state of darkness, so you need to have a higher light to dispel the darkness. That's one explanation. Beis, dat wie steht in Kisvei Arizal, was werd gebracht om Avram van Adam Chadmar Zok and Balagul Simcha Halacha. Now, what's brought down in the Arizal, it's quoted by Halacha by the Avram, Shulchan Aruch with the Alter Rebbe, which we know the Alter Rebbe is the master of happiness and redemption connection with Yud Tes Kislev. As Erev Shabbos darf man versuchen von dem Malachalim von Shabbos to Emer Chaim Zochel. There's a halacha that on Friday a person should taste the foods that are prepared for Shabbos, as the pasuk says, the phrase says, Te'ameh Chaim Zochel. Those who taste of it merit life. So that's the idea of Shabbos, Erev Shabbos. There's the idea of Te'ameh. You have to taste part of the food, Erev Shabbos, before going into Shabbos. So you say, in the Kolel is the Geteg for the Shis Alfishnin. So similarly, when you view the 6 millennia of the world's existence as 6 days, so as in so every day, we have 6 millennium till Mashiach's going to come. So now we're holding Mamash Erev, that's 6 millennia. So as the date is Farbius Mashiach, the Erev Shabbos, Yim Shekul Shabbos, V'nimshach ha'ora b'derech ti'imo al kalpanim von dem Gili from Primus HaTorah, was with Niskal and B'shlemus to Mashiach Tzidkenu. So, as we know, the halacha is that Friday afternoon, hours before Shabbos, we have to taste. So basically we're given we're granted like a glimmer, a foretaste of the revelation, what's going to be the Primus HaTorah, which will take place, which will be made in a manner B'shlemus through Mashiach Tzidkenu. So that's one explanation. The one explanation of why Chassidus was revealed now is because we're holding in a very dark place, so you need a higher earth. Second explanation is that we're mamash at Shabbos, and just like Shabbos is the idea of Mashiach, so just like when before Shabbos there's the idea of Te'ameh Chaim Zochel, the same thing. Erev Shabbos, we are in a state of Erev Shabbos, Shis Alfei Shnin, so we have to taste the taste of what Mashiach is going to be, which that's going to be the idea of Chassidus. But Oich, and you let in the Tzvei Asboris, gefit in the Tzvei Ktzavis, al derech wie in Vayivas Yaakov Levadi Kanal. Now, these two explanations, like we explained, is the two explanations of Yaakov remaining alone, they reflect also two extremes. The Now, on the one hand, according to the first explanation, Chassidus was revealed in the later generations because of the lower level. Because of the great spiritual darkness in these generations, it was necessary to counterbalance by a revelation of very lofty light of Primus Hatera. And Mashenkin later Tzveita Hasbara is der Gilei Chassidus and the Deres Achenim verbunden mit Ma'ala Hazman. Now, by contrast, according to the second explanation, the revelation of Chassidus in these later generations is reflected by the unique positive nature of the present time. Friday afternoon after Chatzos, and therefore at this time there's already a revelation, a foreshadowing of the relation of the ultimate future. So you find this contrast also, just like in Vayishlach Yaakov, you find these two opposing explanations that Lefera are opposite. So too of why Chassidus was revealed. It's also two opposite explanations. One is saying that the world is so low, so you need to have such a which is mashma that it says it's mashma how low we are. Since we're so low, we need to have a higher revelation. And on the other hand, you're saying that no, we're mamash holding at the level of Erev Shabbos, so that Temech Havzach, so we get to start learning Chassidus. So how does that work? And so now the Rebbe basically so far connected the idea of Vayishlach, how it has in it opposing views, and also why Chassidus was revealed. Yud Tes Kislev also has opposing views. Now, in Gimel, he's going to explain the idea of Likketei Sichos, spreading the well springs of Chassidus. So the Rebbe says like this: the beer in them. Explanation is as follows: Since we do as Yud Tes Kislev had aufgetan die Aschala von der Ike die Futzum meine Sefer Chutzel, die Afatze von meiner Chassidus zu alle Yidden, Eich zu Azelfa was gefindt sich in Chutz. It's well known that Yud Tes Kislev marks the beginning of the primary efforts to spread the well springs of Chassidus outwards. Now, the dissemination of the teaching of Chassidus to all Yidden, even those found in the most distant places. The Rebbe said many times, the Yafutza have to go, the Meinesechel, have to go, Imamish the Chutza have to go outside. So that's even though this was a story where Mashiach came, which we knew a long time before the Alter Rebbe, but the idea of Yafutza Meinesechel Futza started in the times of Yud Tes Kislev. So we've spoken about many times the nuance. What does it mean when the well springs spread outwards? As is meant as the mayonas allein dorten kommen chutza, which means that the well springs themselves should come to the outside. Not that the outside is coming to the well springs or get the outside to go to the well springs, or rather you're bringing the mayon, you're bringing the well springs to the outside. The intent is not merely that the well springs of Chassidus will have an effect on distant places, while these wells remain in their natural places, but the well springs themselves will reach outwards. Or even more so, the mayonas darfen sich gefinnen in Chutza and even von Futzu. Furthermore, the well springs must spread to the outer reaches, sich verspreiten in Chutza. They have to flourish and prosper outwards. Bis as jeder Prat und Nekude von Chutza soll sein durchgenommen durch die Meionas, which means to the extent that every particular aspect of the outer reaches will be permeated by the well springs of Chassidus. So that's the dialogue of the Shefutzu meine Sefer Chutza. So the Rebbe says, Azibi alden yonam haven sich on von Teda. Every matter has its sources Teda. So, and everything starts with Teda. It's movement as echt the ear from the Shefutzu meine Sefer Chutza da Fatza and Gilei. Für Primis Teda zu die Yidden, welche gefinden sich in Chutza, heeft sich on damit, was die Mayanas für Primis Teda kommen mit der Gilei in the Teda, bei sie werden vereint sich gleich Chodemamisch. So, every matter has a source in Teda. So by beginning with the expression of Teda, so it becomes possible for it to be expressed in other contexts. Accordingly, It's understood that the spreading of Chassidus outwards, which is the revelation of Pnimis HaTorah, to the Yidden are found in the outer reaches, also begin from a particular initiative within the realms of Torah, which means the well springs of Pnimis HaTorah will be apparent within the teachings of Nigla, the revealed parts of Torah, which is the extent that these two parts of Torah, Nigla and Chassidus, are joined in an absolute unity. It's not two things, it's Hainu Hach. Now, even before the Alter Rebbe was born, there were also Torah giants who achieved prominence in both Nigla and Chassidus. Sai Nigla Torah, Sai Nisted Torah. Pashat, as their limit Nisted Torah, hat aufgetan, as the limit from Nigla Torah is given by Acher. And obviously, their involvement in Pnimis HaTorah affected their approach Nigla, changing the nature of the study of it as well. But deswegen ist es bei sie gewähnt an Eifel von zwei besondere Chalak. Nevertheless, they would regard these two learnings as two distinct realms, Galion and Sasim. So you see the revealed and the hidden. And them is Beistanden Uftel von Alter Rebbe. Now, what did Alter Rebbe? Alter Rebbe constituted a new development as it Alter Rebbe brought, he unified both aspects of Torah in a complete oneness. That was the idea of Alter Rebbe. His name was Shneur Zalman. What is Shneur Zalman? So Shneur, that he brought a light in Torah and Nigla Torah and Sos in the Torah. And not only that, but Alter Rebbe, it wasn't like two separate things. Now, there's Hasidus and there's Nigla has no connection with another. Alter Rebbe, he accomplished that Gali Torah and Pnimis Torah are Hainu after one thing, he unified them in a complete oneness. Okay, so what we said in Gimel is, we explained the idea of Yud Tes Kislev. That's when it started, Yefutzah Manasech HaChutzah. We explained also that idea of Yefutzah Manasech HaChutzah, that not that the Mayanis stay in their place and have an effect on the Mayanis, on the Chutzah, I'm sorry, but on the contrary, that the Mayanis are going to the Chutzah and going to go over there and have the same effect as if it's in its source. And that's the idea of and also this is also everything starts in Torah. So also before the Alter Rebbe, many Gedolim learned Pnimis Torah and Nigla Torah, but they didn't combine it in a unified way. The Alter Rebbe was the first one to actually bring this in complete oneness. Now in Dal, the Rebbe is going to explain when the Neshama's power that transcends the mind shaped the mind. Okay, Dalit. Ribalas Yisrael miskasher beiraisa. Oh, Nochmer Ichayeno Yisrael v'Rezu Kulachad. Now, the Yidden attach itself to the Torah, and moreover, the Torah is our life. Yidden and the Torah are one. This movement is understood. It's evident as Kashem Bis is the in for the Yefutzah Manasech HaChutzah, and Torah the Ichuf and Sasim V'Gaya Deiraisa. Now, just like as we have in regards to the spreading of the well springs outwards, and this brought a new development in Torah, which is the unification of the hidden and revealed aspects in Torah. So the Rebbe says, "Azeh is oich in neshama Yisrael." So too it brought a new development also within the neshamas, the souls of the Jewish people. And them gufa. So through the revelation of the teaching of Chassidus, the possibility for the well springs to spread outwards within the individual world of every person, and which means the hidden dimension of the neshama to be united and revealed. So Chassidus not only did it affect the actual Torah itself, you have Chassidus and Nigla that become unified one to another, but also in the neshama itself, also you have this idea of that the hidden dimension of the soul could be united with the revealed and conscious ones, which means that you have, in practical terms, you have the power of intellect, of Chabad, and Chagas, the intellect and emotions come together. So before the Alter Rebbe came around, so basically a person's mind and emotions were not really connected. They didn't really talk to each other. It was very, very distant. And now comes Chassidus and tells you that the Chabad and Chagas can now be unified. And this is what I was going to explain. Now, just as we know, within each of us, there exist dimensions of the neshama that are hidden, which it's transcendent spiritual potentials that are too elevated to be controlled by our conscious minds, for example. So this is the Rebbe says this. Ebbes tak as euch fahr dem Gile für Teres Chassidus hat Eira Hamona Sassen Nishmasa was es heft von Seichel Pearl given euch if the Keres Gilim. Now, it's true that before the revelation of the teaching of Chassidus, the light of faith, which is the dimension of the neshama that transcends intellect, also had an effect on the revealed powers of the neshama. It means that the power of the soul causes the power of the intellect and emotions to function in a different and more elevated fashion. But that's vegan is the amuna allein geblieben sassum and hecher von seichel, which is God. And nevertheless, the power of faith itself remained hidden above and beyond the intellect. In other words, it cannot be confined or expressed within a person's revealed powers. So what did the Alter Rebbe accomplish? The Alter Rebbe dort aufgetan, als die Amuna von Kabbalas El von der Meile von Seichel sollen durchnehmen the mention in Ganzen. So Alter Rebbe made it possible for faith and Kabbalas El, which we know transcends intellect, to permeate an individual's personality entirely. To the extent that they enter that limited realm and become one with the soul's revealed and conscious power. Which means that a person's conscious mind will then be able to appreciate and absorb concepts that are really inherently beyond the scope of intellect. So that's the idea. That's what Chassidus accomplished. So they've accomplished that people learn Sus and Deraisa beforehand, and people learn the secrets, and even sometimes the Seichel had a connection to the Midas, but it didn't really penetrate. So the idea of Chassidus, the Alter Rebbe was able to take the Amunah Kabbalah Sil, which is higher than Seichel, and penetrate that in the neshama. It become one a person's basically conscious mind, and then be able to appreciate and absorb a concept that are really beyond the scope of intellect, which is only through Chassidus, only through the Alter Rebbe you can accomplish that. It's now in Hayes going to explain the idea of uniting the Bnei Yisrael. He says it is Kashem says by Yad Befrat as Chassidus have looked on the Yefutz Man Sefer Chutz dem Ichel von Mayin Neshama. Just as on the individual level, Chassidus grants the potential for spreading the well springs outwards, that the well springs of the neshama, which we said the well springs is the power of faith in Kabbalah's soul, will be united to within the outer reaches, which basically means the conscious powers of the intellect and emotion. So too, this grants the potential for true unity amongst the Jewish people as a whole, who together all constitute one complete body. What does that mean? You have the leaders of the thousands amongst Yidden, which they correspond to the heads and the minds of the Jewish people. So they are the wellsprings, the Rosh Alpha Yisrael, the wellsprings. Is Amol Fargida Chassidus given the Seder as the daily souls and given up this in Zer Dalamis. Emes Takas Yam Gat Ashpoiv Kolis Am Yisrael. Now, before the revelation of Chassidus, basically the spiritual leaders of the Jewish people, they were secluded in their own space. Now, obviously they had an influence over the Jewish people as a whole. See Dorfteda was reflect von Sie lernen, other durch uplernen sich von Sie Hanogas Davis. So either through Torah that they taught, or through, let's say, their personal examples of the conduct that they demonstrated. Now, nevertheless, they were able to affect the Jewish people as a whole. Now, even though they taught Torah through the Midas, but nevertheless, although they were able to affect the Jewish people as a whole, and mainly individuals on a personal level, they themselves remain separate from the outer reaches. I say that von Futzum and Sefer Futzah aufgetan, als die Gedele Yisrael sollen sich nicht abgeschlossen in Zer Dal Ames. So, what was the new path the new divine service associated with the spreading of the well springs outwards, that the Likketei Yisrael now, they were not they weren't like just separated and be in their own dalams. Nor they on Areinkommen in Chutza, but they themselves should also go to the outside in the Chutza zone zen ba'oni imam was ein oni ela b'dea. So the leaders interacted with the people who were in a state of anius, poverty. In other words, with poverty understood in terms that the Chachamim say a man is poor only with lacking knowledge, right? Ein oni ela b'dea. On reden mit oni auf dem Loschen und mit die Asius, was sie had to verstehen. So and spoke to them in the language and terms that they could understand. So that's the idea of it was accomplished after Yud Tes Kislev, the Chutza, that the Likketei Yisrael should not be. They were not locked away in their Dal Amis and had an ashpa on everybody else, but rather they themselves went to the Chutza. They themselves went and spoke to people who were in a state of anias, of poverty, ain't only elabedea, that they should speak to them in their language that they understood.
Effect, but they actually got it with themselves.
Yeah. Noch more. So we bad as the Mayonas start from their Griechen, yet in the Kudin, Prat from the Chutza, since the spreadings of the wellsprings outwards must encompass every aspect and particular of the Chutza, is moving, as thus is Kolel, as the Likketei Yisrael even sich up euch mit den Inyonim Gashma von Am Yisrael. So, being that the wellsprings must encompass every aspect of Chutza, so the involvement of the Likketei Yisrael within the Yidden are including involvement with the people's material concerns. That's why, if you think about it, so many people coming to the Rebbe for Gashmius. Well, we coming to the Rebbe for Gashmius. The Rebbe is the idea of spiritual, no. But because the idea of after this that the Mayanas have to go mamish to Chutz in every aspect, so that means that the Likketei Yisrael have to be really intertwined with the Chutza, which that's the Gashmius. Okay, we'll stop here, Mr. Shem.